Hello everyone, before starting with the third part, I must say that this will be the last part, because the manhwa was cancelled. I know, it's a terrible day for Rain.
We resumed just after our protagonist had told the bald black man that he had better not interfere in his affairs. The bald man met the lady again and told her that the protagonist was already in good condition, and he also affirmed that he had a lot of power, therefore, she did not have to worry about him anymore. She seemed stupefied, and for that reason she asked the bald man the reason for saying that, and he replied that he saw that the lady was very worried. Upon hearing said answer, she got very angry. Leaving this aside, we see our protagonist looking at the system, because the system was telling him that he had unlocked the stores, and proceeded to present him with all the weapons that were in that store. But there were a problem. The weapons that were in the store cost 10 million won, so it was an excessive amount of money for the protagonist. With the money he had at that time, he managed to buy a knife, an object that at the moment seemed enough. The weapons that were worth 10 million won were legendary weapons, which could kill monsters in a single cut. Now we see a baboon that was eating a person. When the protagonist realizes this, he jumped quickly and he inserted a blow to the primate, because he wanted to save that person and find out who he was. The almost unconscious man tried to communicate, telling the protagonist to please help him, since apparently he was poisoned. Our protagonist gave him medicine and the boy improved instantly. He began to tell the protagonist that he and his teacher had gone to that forest for an expedition, but those primates had found him and his teacher had been captured, so he asked the protagonist for a phone to bring people and help save his master. The hero just stared at him. The hero thought that calling the association was a waste. He knew that if those beasts were powerful, then it would grant him a lot points. So the protagonist told the boy that he was going to go, but the boy told him not to go since the king of the baboons was too powerful. Now we managed to see the king of the baboons, who was with the boy's master. The master knew that he couldn't fight with so many primates at once, so he guessed that maybe if he killed the boss, the subordinates would retreat, so he quickly summoned his shadow swords, and got ready to use his skill to kill him with just one hit. When the master started to use the skill, he suddenly began to disappear. All the baboons were surprised, and the teacher quickly began to move. He realized that no one of the baboons' dances couldn't see him, so he used that opportunity to insert multiple punches to all the primates that were close to the king, and then he went quickly in the direction of the king's head. At the moment when he got close enough to have a chance to do so, the baboon king turned his gaze towards him, and he launched a violent punch towards where the teacher was. He was surprised because he never thought that any creature could detect his presence while using his special ability. Then scared, he decided to escape, taking advantage of the fact that he was still in his shadow state, which made it impossible for him to suffer damage by physical attacks. The master tried to flee to the sky, but the baboon king jumped and created a gust of air that caused him to come out of his shadow. The master was very surprised, because although this was the first fight between the two, the baboon king had figured out how it worked, his technique. The baboon king appeared next to the master in a second. The baboon king tried to hit him again, but the master managed to activate his technique again, avoiding being hit. Analyzing the fight, the best option the master found was to escape, but the baboon king realized this and began to destroy all the places where the master could land. The master knew that if he failed to escape, he would be killed. The baboon king continued to throw rocks with great speed and force. One of these rocks he hit the teacher, and made him crash against a wall, when the baboon king prepared to grab him and squeeze him to death. But at that moment our protagonist had appeared and had stopped the attack. After attacking, the main character suggested to the teacher that he stop being in the way and better get out of that place, so that he would not get hurt. Puzzled, the teacher followed those orders of the stranger who had saved him. After moving far enough away to feel safe, he decided to observe the fierce battle, to evaluate the skills of our hero. We managed to observe a great exchange of blows at superhuman speed. So much was the force of each blow that the stone on which our hero was standing began to break. The hero, noticing that, he assumed that the force he was applying was not enough. Asking the giant primate if he was the king of the baboons, this beast answered him yes. And since he was the only human he had been able to fight against in pairs, he would give him a death. Dignified, once the fight began, the baboon tried to hit him, but they were not strong enough to hurt the protagonist. While the blows that the protagonist connected caused many a lot of damage, the baboon king, seeing that he was exceeded in strength, thought that grabbing it was the best option, but the protagonist returned his throws as if it were nothing and threw it very far. Thinking that throwing it far should already be finished, the master, he was amazed with the strength of the protagonist. thinking that he needed it in his guild. At that moment the protagonist observes that something is approaching from where the primate is. It was a giant staff, which the protagonist assumed was the ability of the Baboon King. The king confirmed it, while telling him that he would soon die since no one had survived a fight against him. After showing his skill, the king proceeded to attack the protagonist with his staff, but the protagonist dodged as if it were nothing. Even so, he had given an attack that sent him flying. The protagonist reacted quickly and began to approach, to steal the cane from the king, who had become the same size as the protagonist, to improve his ability. The protagonist told him what was that going to be his only attack, which would end him permanently. Being about to hit him, the Baboon King made a movement of his fingers, which made the cane turn into a small stick. While the protagonist was stupefied, the baboon took the opportunity to hit him repeatedly, using his ability to grow the staff in an extreme way, trying to crush the protagonist. Our hero felt defeated for a moment, but thinking as a survivor he decided to use all his power to stop that attack. At the same time the teacher, seeing from afar, thought that it was a waste for such a powerful S-class to perish like that, but in an effort to survive, he knew he had to withdraw before the baboon noticed his presence. But just at that moment the baboon turned to see him, which scared him a lot. But our victorious protagonist with one fist sent the Baboon King flying. The protagonist with a haughty character told him that he was not going to die with a simple attack. The teacher was really surprised, since he had never seen such a strong person. The protagonist continued talking with the Baboon King, telling him that from that moment he was going to use his true strength. While the Baboon King stood up again, he replied that it was the first time that a person had resisted all his attacks, and the protagonist told him that this was because of that he had a power superior to that of the king. This response made the Baboon King enraged, causing him to start throwing his stick at him multiple times, at an incredible speed that seemed as if there were many sticks, but the protagonist didn't even flinch. He decided to hit him. End the fight using a new definitive technique, the ability to stop time. After activating it, in the blink of an eye he killed the Baboon King. The teacher was still stupefied, since for him, the protagonist had moved too fast. He seemed the fastest person in the world. Once the Baboon King disintegrated, a chest appeared and the protagonist searched inside. First he found the Baboon King's staff, which gave him resistance to strong blows, among other things. Then he found a bracelet that increased all his magical power, also gave him impressive resistance. And finally he found a card, but he had no idea what it was for. But the teacher approached him and told him that that card brought a lot of money, so with that he could have a quiet life, in addition to trying to convince the protagonist to join his guild. But the protagonist replied that he did not need to join any guild. Even so the teacher told him he gave his card, telling him that if he needed anything, he could call him. Now we see the protagonist in a quiet place, looking at the money in the system, knowing that he had enough to buy legendary weapons. He first set out to buy all the legendary weapons and knives he could. They were on the menu, and then he started buying different things, like houses, cars and all that stuff. Changing the scene, we see the people who had created the system. They were torturing an old man. One of the subordinates told her boss that it was better to let him go, but he replied that he knew very important things, and tried to ask the old man to give him the location of where the system was, to which the old man replied no. He is never going to unleash a catastrophe in the world. The boss confirms that he was not going to do anything like that, and they inform us that this old man is the father of the girl who had previously saved the protagonist. And for this reason the subordinate kept telling him that it was better to let the old man go, because it could be a problem if his family found out. While they continued arguing about the location of the system, the old man wondered if the boss was still human, to which he replied that he could look at himself, and the old man realized that he had actually become a demon. Once the boss already had the information he needed, he decided to kill him, and told his secretary to give up the body. Elsewhere, we see how the protagonist met again with the girl he had saved, bringing her a suit and a sword, telling her that he had given her that so that she would improve and defend herself from all the people who wanted to hurt her. She told him that she did not deserve any of those things, but the protagonist replied that he would give them to her in exchange for a favor. He asked what kind of favor he wanted, and he wanted her to join his team, since he had a new mission that he wanted to do with colleagues. Since the system had asked him for that, with a huge smile, she answered yes, I would go with him. Now the protagonist was in search of the second companion of the mission, for which he decided to call the teacher that he rescued from the baboon, and he immediately agreed to join his team. But he did tell him that since he was in a guild, all the achievements obtained in the adventure would go to his guild. The protagonist replied that he did not care, all he wanted was to kill the Demon King. Thanks for watching the video. Remember that this manhwa was cancelled. So recommend me others that you would like to watch on the channel.